The opinions and suggestions expressed on the following program are solely those of the participants and are not necessarily endorsed by KRMG, Cox Media Group Incorporated, or the program sponsors. This following program is sponsored by Causeway, LLC. Information in this broadcast is not intended as an investment, tax, or financial advice. Matthew Moore is not a licensed investment advisor and speaks solely from his experience and opinions. All information in this broadcast is for entertainment or educational purposes only. Matthew Moore, Causeway, LLC, and Cox Media Group Tulsa are not responsible for the success or failure of any person's investment decisions or purchases. Matthew Moore, Causeway, LLC, and Cox Media Group Tulsa makes no and expressly disclaims all representations, warranties, and guarantees with respect to this broadcast and its sponsors. Investing in any market is inherently risky and can be financially dangerous. Invest at your own risk. Gather knowledge in the world of cryptocurrency right now on 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's news and talk. Welcome to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. Matthew is locally based right here in Tulsa. Questions, comments, concerns? Call 918-460-5764 or send us an open mic using the KRMG app. Now, here's Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore.
Good Sunday evening to you. My name's Russell Mills. Thank you very much for joining us this evening for Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. It's been a bumpy ride in the world of cryptocurrencies recently. We're going to break it down for you this evening, talk a little bit about what's next or what could come next. And we're going to do it with a guy who's been in this game for a while. And we named the show after him because it's his show. Matthew J. Moore. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Russell. It's so good to be back. I love doing this every Sunday. So this is the point in the process when I welcome all of you who are listening to this show, whether you're a Bitcoin believer, misfit day trader, hobby investor, or most importantly, those Bitcoin haters, we still welcome you. This is one of America's only radio shows dedicated to Bitcoin and the digital ecosystem itself. And yes, like I said, we welcome everybody, no matter who they are or what they believe, because really, Bitcoin is for the people, and that is why we do this show every Sunday at 5 p.m. It's our mission to get the masses thinking about what is money and where is the future of money going? Because those are all important questions, right? And despite the dollar price of Bitcoin, we believe Bitcoin will ultimately become a flight to safety. And another person who believes this is my fill-in co-host and friend and sponsor, Scott. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me again. Today, we've got a returning guest, a real titan of the Bitcoin world. His name is Greg Foss, and he's got a great take on what is going on here in the world of crypto. Stocks and cryptocurrencies, of course, have been hit really hard, and things might get worse before they get better. But the question remains, though, is will the Federal Reserve change course, or will they continue to aid the coming recession by hawkish monetary policy? And what should we expect Bitcoin to do in the coming weeks and months?
Yeah, it seems that we've got more questions than answers at this point. But if you're worried, don't be. Wait till you hear what Greg has to say. But before we bring him on, I'd like to introduce our sponsor for this segment. This segment is made possible by a company called Hedge. Do you have a strategy to obtain cryptocurrency on a regular basis? Do you plan to automate your dollar cost averaging? What about getting all or part of your paycheck in Bitcoin? I like that idea. Hedge is revolutionizing how you get paid, and Hedge makes it easy to automatically convert your pay into Bitcoin. Whether it's an employer or employee, you can get started in 4 easy steps. Start getting paid in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Litecoin. Crypto is a long-term play. Start a strategy today. Hedge is here to make it easy to stack those the sats. Sats, that's right. Sometimes I get tongue-tied. Sats. Month after month. And yes, I'm doing that as well. But what are you waiting for? Start living on the Hedge. Check them out at gethedge.io. Again, that is gethedge.io. Well, and if you're really ready to dive right in with Hedge, you can also let them know that I sent you. You can go to my website, mattjmoore.com, and on the homepage, you can scroll down and find the button that says Get Hedge. You can start the sign-up process today. It's super easy. Okay, everyone, are you ready? Are you ready to have a phenomenal show? Because you know what? This world of ours is going to get rocked. I think it's time to bring on the Bitcoin boss, Greg Foss. Yes, that's right. Greg is making waves in the space and is currently the Bitcoin strategist for Validus Power. Greg, welcome back to one of America's only radio shows dedicated to Bitcoin. Please say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words.
Sure, guys. Thanks so much for having me back, and happy Memorial Day to my American friends. I'm Greg Foss. I'm 58 years old. I've spent a lifetime, it sure feels like a lifetime, in the hedge fund business. I'm currently semi-retired from managing other people's money, but it doesn't mean I care any less to try and help others to financial stability and financial freedom. So I've been managing risk for over 35 years, and part of managing risk is to consider new investment options that are presented to people. And I'm very excited to have found Bitcoin myself, and I'm trying to help others get along that path.
Awesome, Greg. Thank you so much for being with us. We know that you used to work for the Royal Bank of Canada and, of course, have extensive experience in the credit markets. Can you kind of paint a macro picture for us? What do you think is going on, and why is Bitcoin reacting the way that it is?
Well, guys, the macro markets are very, very shaky right now. It all surrounds an inflation environment where the Fed, with their dual mandate, and that's a tough mandate that the Fed has, the dual mandate, which is to fight inflation and full employment, sometimes are at odds with each other. And that's what we're seeing in the market right now, an uncertain market. But 30 years ago, I returned from Cornell University to Canada to work for Canada's largest financial institution. And I was exposed to a situation where I've been looking for a solution to the fiat Ponzi. And what you need to understand is it's not always the price of Bitcoin that's most important. It's the value of Bitcoin. And in my opinion, the value of Bitcoin keeps increasing while the price has been dragged down by other factors, including some stuff that's gone on in the, I quote unquote, air quotes, the crypto universe, as well as stuff that goes on with risk assets in general. So it's a bit of a mixed picture, but remember, there's Bitcoin, and only Bitcoin solves the fiat Ponzi.
So much of what we've seen in the markets has been highly influenced, obviously, by the actions of the Federal Reserve and the central banks. And you talked about this dual mandate. And I've stated many times on this show that I feel that the Fed has kind of lost control of the situation, but may be forced to keep QE going. But the question is, are things different this time? You've talked about this whole 3 hikes and a stumble concept. Can you explain the 3 hikes and a stumble?
Yes, absolutely. So great question, Matt. The reality is it's only mathematics. It's absolutely impossible for the Fed to stop quantitative easing. Okay, I need your listeners to understand that it's nothing more than grade 11 math. The Fed is jawboning their desire to increase rates and stop what they call the monthly bond purchases and whatnot. There was a segment before you started the show, and I was listening quite attentively, because someone stated they believe that the U.S. is already in recession. And the definition of recession is a little bit of a misnomer. Its pure definition is 2 successive quarters, 3 months as a quarter, so 6 full months in duration, 6 full months of economic contraction. Well, they've already announced 3 months of economic contraction. So it's a little bit of a, we're sort of waving our hands here, but there's a possibility the United States is already in economic recession. And that doesn't make me happy. But when you are in economic recession, one of the problems you have is full employment. So if the Fed on the one hand is trying to maintain full employment, and on the other hand is worried about inflation and therefore is increasing interest rates, which causes an economic slowdown, there's a little bit of sucking and blowing going on, right, guys? And you cannot solve both of those mandates. So it's a very tenuous time for the U.S. And the history of that expression, 3 hikes and a stumble, is typically after 3 interest rate hikes by the Fed. The financial markets, like the stock markets, are down meaningful amounts like we are seeing right now. And the Fed takes their foot off the brake and realizes if they continue to impose quantitative tightening, the economy is going to go into the sewer even faster than it already is.
So in terms of like a Bitcoin and really just U.S. stocks, Canada stocks, just looking at the full financial world, do things get worse before they get better? Does this bear market continue on for a year or more?
Yeah, guys, it's a great question because no one knows, right? But all I know is I've calculated the intrinsic value of Bitcoin using credit default swap spreads on sovereign debt. Now, these spreads are dynamic. They increase and decrease with the riskiness of the global economy, the macroeconomy, and they increase and decrease with the riskiness of the sovereign borrower. But the reality is Bitcoin is worth over $400,000 per coin today using that metric, and it's trading under 30,000. I don't care if it goes to 21,000, if it goes to 15,000. The point is the value has increased and the price has not kept pace. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to be happy that you can buy insurance at a lower price. So it's a bit of a rounding error in my opinion. I am not going to predict the price. I will just tell you it appears extremely cheap from everything I look at right now.
So there is definitely a difference between price and value, and that seems to be part of what's going on right now with the cryptocurrency market. We'll break it down further for you with Greg Foss coming up. After a quick timeout, you're listening to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore on 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's News and Talk. Welcome back to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. I'm Russell Mills. You're listening to us live from Tulsa, Oklahoma on 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's News and Talk. Wherever you are and whomever you are with, I hope you're having a safe Memorial Day weekend. Hope everything's going well for you. Please stop for a moment and thank those who sacrificed everything to help keep this country free. All right, and now, on a happier note, here is the guy who hosts the show, the man with the answers, where answers are available on cryptocurrency, Matthew J. Moore. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Russell. Yeah, that's right. I hope everybody's enjoying this weekend. In fact, I've gotten some sun, and if I look a little bit orange, it's not the spray tan.
Pinky, for sure.
Oh, yeah, a little
pinkish,
little pink, yeah. But, yeah, we like to have that orange glow, that Bitcoin glow. That's a little bit of an obsession of mine here. But to help me with this episode today, I have got my co-host, my fill-in co-host. He's a friend and sponsor, Scott. How you doing? You ready to do round two?
Ready to do round two, Matt. Happy to be here. And of course, for our listeners, don't forget, if you missed an episode on this radio show, you can always find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and of course, krmg.com. And if you miss an episode, we've got you covered.
That's right. Well, on the line with us today is none other than the Special Ops Cyber Hornet, de facto math professor and Bitcoin believer, Greg Foss. Greg is the chief Bitcoin strategist at Validus Power, and he is here to give us some information, some well-needed information. So welcome back, Greg. You ready for this?
Yeah, looking forward to it, guys. Thanks again for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, recently, we've seen the elite head to Davos to discuss the future at the World Economic Forum. And billionaire hedge fund manager Ray Dalio had some interesting things to say about cash, equities, and Bitcoin on CNBC. And I really would love to get your take on his comments. We know he's not quite a maxi as we are, but take a listen to this clip.
I think a digital gold, which would be a Bitcoin type of thing, is something that probably, in the interest of diversification of finding an alternative to gold, has a little spot relative to gold and then relative to other assets. But I think that we're in an environment that we're now going to ask, what is the new money? And so when I say cash is trash, what I mean is that all currencies will be currencies that will go down in relationships to goods and services. And we are in an environment where we're going to be looking at what are those assets? What is the type of money that you could move between countries that's a medium of exchange and a storehold of wealth? Bitcoin has made a tremendous achievement over the last 11 years.
Yeah, I was watching you on stage with those billionaires down in Miami during the Bitcoin conference, and you've had conversations with billionaires who understand Bitcoin. In your opinion, what are these guys like Ray Dalio up to when it comes to Bitcoin?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Mr. Dalio and his ability to manage risk. He manages the largest hedge fund in the world. has certainly been very successful in balancing the risks available in traditional assets like bonds and equities. Mr. Dalio points out that he thinks that Bitcoin is digital gold. I'd like to take it one step further. I believe Bitcoin to be digital energy. And I don't want to have a fight with Mr. Dalio on that subject. It's both of them are hard assets, okay? Let's just agree. Let's just say that we both agree. And we agree on another topic, that cash is trash. He says fiat currencies are programmed, or this is my words, fiat currencies are programmed to debase. It's only pure mathematics, Matt. And that's because we are in a DEBT, debt spiral. And when you're in a debt spiral, it's the fiat currency that needs to be printed. And by having to print the fiat currency, the debasement is 100% certain. Everybody needs a hedge against that certainty of fiat debasement.
So, Greg, when does Bitcoin sort of get treated the way that it should? Is it sort of when people realize that there's no stopping the inflation train that's kind of happening? I know you've mentioned before that inflation is a compounding event. So, can you kind of explain that for us?
Wow, that's so great that you pointed that out, right? Yeah, I need people to understand. Inflation compounds. That means it's like interest that compounds, but it's a penalizing event. So inflation has just been reported to be 8.5%, US CPI, 8.5% annualized. And even if it does fall from 8.5% to 6.5%, I'm just projecting a disinflationary environment, those two successive results build on each other. And that's very damaging because 8.5% and 6.5% compounding is over 15%. And you need protection against that. When is Bitcoin going to be accepted the way it should be? It's an education process, guys. I don't know. All I know is it's the most or the best asymmetric trade and investment opportunity I have ever seen in 35 years. And the longer the price stays at current levels, the more opportunity there is for people to get involved in this investment opportunity, and the better off they will be in the future. So I don't know when the light bulb finally goes on. Perhaps it's when people read the Fidelity report. Perhaps it's when more countries start adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. But quite honestly, it doesn't bother me. In fact, I'm happy for the people who have a chance to buy Bitcoin at extremely cheap prices.
Well, and you know, we love to take questions from listeners, and we've only got a couple more minutes before we got to go to break, but I don't know if you can answer this one in a short time. But here's the question from a listener. How was it ever palatable for central banks to monopolize and then debase the currency supply, all in the name of stability?
It wasn't, okay? It's not palatable, but that's what central banks do. So off the break. I cannot stand the taste of that, but it's what central banks do.
Okay, well, hopefully that answers the question for our listener. But, you know, I just want to let everybody know who is listening to this program. If you are just dying to know more, if you want somebody to kind of hold your hand through this process, you are more than welcome to go to my website, mattjmoore.com. I love to set up consultations and kind of share this information that we talk about on a regular basis. And trust me, we have had a plethora of wonderful guests join us on a regular basis. And I would encourage you, go back, listen to our past episodes. In fact, we've even had Greg on before. So this is a returning episode for him. And, you know, this world is vast. And I just want to make sure that people know what to expect and hopefully when to expect it. We don't have a crystal ball, but we try to do our best by bringing intelligent people like Mr. Greg on to share his thoughts. And I promise you won't regret it.
You know, we've only got about a minute left here, but if you could real quick, Greg, talk a little bit about, you know, is Bitcoin a good hedge when we're seeing these kind of inflationary times? I mean, it seems like that would be a good reason, especially with the prices so low, to maybe think about doing it with just a few secs.
Sure, guys, absolutely. I have to reiterate, it is the best asymmetric investment opportunity I have ever seen in 35 years. I'll just tell you that experience of mine doesn't come overnight. again, having sat in a risk chair, I can give you my opinion that you are very lucky to be able to buy Bitcoin as a hedge to the fiat shenanigans and the central bank shenanigans going on in the world.
All right, you are listening to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore on 102.3 KRMG. That was Greg Foss from Validus Power. We'll be talking more with him after a break. We do need to get you caught up on the news and other stuff that's going on today. We will return with our co-host, Scott McElroy, and, of course, our host, Matthew J. Moore. And that website, again, Matt J. Moore with 2 O's.com. We'll be back with more of Cryptocurrency right after this. Welcome back to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. This is 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's News and Talk. I'm Russell Mills. Hope that you're enjoying a safe Memorial Day weekend. Hope everything's going well for you. Enjoy your day off tomorrow if you've got one. Those of us in the radio business, most of us will not have the day off tomorrow. I will be among those folks who will be working. In any case, one of the hardest working guys I know, and somebody who's been working on this cryptocurrency stuff for quite a while, is the host of our show, Matthew J. Moore. Hey, Matt.
Hey, thanks, Russell. And you know what? People always miss your sexy voice, so I think it's actually good that you're going to be back.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Well, guys, we have another great segment, and to help hammer out this Bitcoin-filled segment is my fill-in co-host and sponsor, Scott McElroy. Welcome back, man. You ready?
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. Glad to be here. And of course, listeners, if you've missed the last few segments, we've been chatting with Greg Foss, who is a Bitcoin strategist at Validus Power. Greg, let's just kick this segment off with, I've got a statement here and then a question. We're currently seeing banks warning the Federal Reserve that a digital dollar could doom the mainstream banking system. So is this now a fight between like average banks and the central bank? Do your mom and pop banks start adopting Bitcoin by providing Bitcoin services? Kind of speak to that for us.
You know, it's a hard question to answer. I'm going to assume we're talking about a central bank digital currency here.
Correct.
And there is I have some reservations about a central bank digital currency that goes outside of the banking system, but just impacts the average American and Canadian citizen. We've experienced in Canada where the government has actually frozen bank accounts. They did not agree with a trucker protest that took place in Canada, and they took it upon themselves, I'm talking about the federal government, took it upon themselves to freeze the bank accounts of Canadian citizens that were supporting the truckers. With a central bank digital currency, that becomes even easier for a government to do. Now, you mentioned regional banks and some smaller banks. The American banking system is much different than the Canadian banking system. Canada only has 8 global or coast-to-coast or nationwide banks. In the U.S., you have thousands of them. So in Canada, it's much easier to freeze the bank accounts of an ordinary citizen because there's really only 4 or 5 choices a Canadian can make when they go into the banks because the banks stretch coast to coast. In the U.S., there's thousands of choices. It would be more difficult to freeze a bank account in the U.S. rather than a central bank digital currency where they could just have an on-off switch and basically say, hey, Russell, or hey, Matt, your ability to access this central bank digital currency is frozen. And I noticed that Russell and Matt were at a protest in Tulsa protesting something that the government or the central bank didn't agree with. So you can see how it could be very dangerous. Not just from the fact that digital currencies are nothing more than fiat currencies, but if they have a central bank control, they also have surveillance. So it's fiat currency with surveillance. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, it seems like we could probably talk for a couple of hours on that, but maybe another time. So we're also seeing nation states more and more nation states move towards Bitcoin adoption. We're seeing central banks discussing, of course, what you've been talking about is central bank digital currencies. And you also have organizations like JP Morgan now saying that they see Bitcoin as their preferred alternative asset class. So what's going on here? Can you give us your geopolitical take on what's happening?
Yeah, a little geopolitical and also a little education, right? Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, famously said that Bitcoin's a Ponzi, and now you have the bank embracing it as a alternative asset class. That's part of education, right? I need you guys to understand and the listeners to understand. Only Bitcoin solves the fiat Ponzi. Other digital assets, whether they be Ethereum or any other digital asset out there, heaven forbid Luna, they don't solve the fiat Ponzi. In fact, some of them could be Ponzi's of their own in their own right. We saw what happened with Luna, and very unfortunately, many people lost a lot of money on Luna. There's Bitcoin, and then there's bleep coins, okay? Just focus on Bitcoin, people. That is the only insurance policy against the fiat Ponzi. Everything else could, in its own right, be its own type of Ponzi.
So, Greg, I wanted to bring this up. You mentioned Bitcoin as a monetization of energy. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, but we've recently seen Russia take a positive stance towards Bitcoin. Do you see Russia or the rest of the world selling natural resources and energy in Bitcoin instead of dollars? Like, what happens here?
Oh my God, I love that question because I'm an engineer, and for me, it makes sense to sell valuable natural resource energy for digital energy, right? Why would you sell valuable natural resource energy in the case of Canada as a proud Canadian? Why would we take payment in U.S. dollars when in fact the United States can just print those U.S. dollars? So de facto, that means the USA can print oil and natural gas. Wow. Is that ever a competitive advantage for the United States? But as Canadians, I'm like, why would we take these worthless fiat dollars for our valuable natural resource energy? It would be much smarter for us to take Bitcoin, which is digital energy. And I believe Russia and other resource-rich nations will figure that out as well.
And recently, you also tweeted, "Follow credit risk, not economists. U.S. retailers CDS is gapping." Can you explain that tweet for us? What does that mean?
Sure. CDS stands for credit default swaps, and credit. So CDS spread is a measure of risk inherent in any counterparty. I mentioned that I had measured the value of Bitcoin using CDS or credit default swap spreads on sovereign nations. This tweet was directed at a U.S. retailer. In fact, it was Gap Inc. And Gap CDS was increasing meaningfully as the market interpreted the credit risk of Gap as increasing with the challenges of the market. Credit is a prior claim on any capital structure, meaning if the credit isn't worth 100 cents on the dollar, the equity is worth zero. So you better understand what's going on in credit markets if you are an equity investor, because you are a subordinate claim. And the same thing applies to governments. If you don't understand what's going on in the government debt markets and the risks inherent in those markets, you'll see equity markets on a macro basis get flung around like the tail of a dog. I frequently say, credit is the dog and equity is the tail. You better understand what the dog is doing.
Gosh, Greg, I feel like I've gotten kind of a college level education that I never got in my financial classes in college. So really kind of essentially bring it down to like the average Joe. What does the average Joe do during the markets right now going forward, let's say in the next 6 months to a year?
It's not easy, guys. They don't teach you a lot of this in college because they don't want to teach you that the commercial banking system is built on sand and that the commercial banking system is frequently insolvent because of credit risks inherent in the system. But I don't want to start a fire alarm. I'm not trying to panic anybody. The reality is, though, you need, by and large, many people need professional advice. And this is why I would recommend that people reach out to professionals like you, Matt, in that it's not easy to understand and to navigate these markets. And a bear market is a very difficult time to navigate. The hardest thing to do during a bear market is think rationally and control your emotions. And again, you need to have sat in a risk chair for a good long time. They don't teach you this. You don't graduate from university and automatically become a good risk manager. You have to, pay your dues and sit in a risk chair. So my best advice is to seek professional opinions. Absolutely.
So, Greg, this one's a little off the cuff here, but I was just curious, with all that you're doing in the space and the stuff that you're paying attention to and studying, and the stuff that you actually have a lot of knowledge in, is there anything that is specifically in this space sticking out to you that's really caught your attention? Maybe you're excited. Maybe you're sitting on the edge of your seat with your bucket of popcorn watching to see what happens next. What's got you going?
I love the research report that was produced by Fidelity. You guys know that Fidelity is one of the top 4 asset managers, traditional asset managers in the world. And Fidelity came out with a report that was just so well done, detailing the characteristics of Bitcoin versus other digital assets, firstly. Also detailing the characteristics of Bitcoin as insurance against a failure in the fiat system. So when you get a top 4 investment manager that is going to offer these services, the ability to invest in Bitcoin to their clients, they've mentioned it, every 401k in the USA that's with Fidelity will be able to own a sliver of Bitcoin. That makes me excited. And I need to take this opportunity to tell your listeners, we're not saying go all in, people. We are saying if you own 0 Bitcoin, you're actually taking more risk than if you own a proper portfolio allocation. And for listeners who are wondering, start with 5% of your total net worth in Bitcoin. It's the most valuable insurance you will ever be able to buy.
In the next 2 minutes here before we go to break, what's your prognosis of the bond market in general?
Bonds are a fiat contract, and given that fiat is programmed to debase, when you lend money to a counterparty, and that includes your government, not only in this day and age are you earning a below inflation-adjusted return, meaning your real return after subtracting out inflation is negative. That's a horrible investment, but it even becomes even more horrible when the fact is that your $100 or whatever the principal amount that you lent the government 10 years or 20 or 30 years later is going to be worth far less than the $100 you lent the government. It's a horrible investment. That being said, many of the pension plans out there still own bonds, and I'm very disappointed that more pension plans haven't made the switch and sold some of their bond allocation to own some Bitcoin.
When do you think that switch is coming?
We're only 13 years down the road, fellas. I've been in the high yield markets my whole career. It took about 25 years for Canadian investment institutions to embrace high yield bonds. I'm expecting that the adoption process for Bitcoin will be similar. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens when a big account like Fidelity starts offering it. And if other accounts don't offer it, they'll lose clients to Fidelity because I know people want this diversification.
All right, you are listening to the voice of Greg Foss, joining us from Validus Power up there in Canada, a returning guest here on Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. I'm Russell Mills. We're going to take a quick time out. We'll be back with Matt and, of course, Scott McElroy and more from Greg Foss about the future of Bitcoin. What's the next couple of years look like? You're listening to 102.3 KRMG, Tulsa's News and Talk. Welcome back to Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore. Hope you're having a safe Memorial Day weekend. Thank you very much for spending a little time with us on your Sunday evening. We are live in the big city of Tulsa, Oklahoma. We're talking with the experts, as we do each and every week, and discussing the ins and outs of cryptocurrencies and what's next for Bitcoin, which has struggled in terms of price, but according to our guests, in value it may be stronger than ever. Let's bring in our host, Matthew J. Moore. Hey, Matt.
Thanks, Russell. That's right. We are trying to bring value to you, the listener, every Sunday, 5 o'clock Central Time. And if you miss an episode, you can always catch us on Spotify or KMG's website. We got plenty of places where you can check us out. But to help me hash out the rest of this episode, I've got my trusted fill-in co-host and sponsor, Scott McElroy. Scott, welcome back, man.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, I love it. Confidence right there.
There we go.
Well, hey, guess what? If you guys haven't figured it out, this show is only made possible by our wonderful sponsors. And yes, one of them is sitting over here next to my left. So this show is made possible by Bubble Up Car Wash. You know, yes, spring is in the air. And in Oklahoma, that means two things: tornadoes and nasty pollen all over the place. I've been sneezing. I don't know about you. Well, there's nothing we can do about those tornadoes, but we can definitely help you with that yellow pollen-tinted car that becomes so prevalent this time of year. That's why this segment is brought to you by Bubble Up Car Wash in Broken Arrow off of 470 East Kenosha Street. They are Broken Arrow's newest locally owned car wash with all the bells and whistles to make your car clean, shiny, and dry. Come take advantage of their free vacuums, air wands, and towels. Trust me, you'll need them. They have unlimited wash plans starting at $19.99 a month, and you can add a family member for $15 a month per vehicle. So here's the question. What are you waiting for? Go cheer up at Bubble Up, and who knows, you might catch a glimpse of their family dog, Bentley the Bubble Up Pup. You can check them out at mybubbleplup.com. So, Scott, here's the question. Is Bentley there all the time?
No.
Oh,
Okay, here's the other question. When's Bentley going to come in and say howdy?
You know what? I can bring him next time I'm here.
That'd be
okay,
awesome.
that sounds like a
I'm
plan.
sure that's
He would-
unauthorized,
he
but
would
do it
love it.
anyway because I love animals. Absolutely
it.
love them. The Bubble Up Pup. There's only one of those, folks.
That's right.
It's Bentley.
Well, today we've had a wonderful chat and visit with Greg Foss, who is the Bitcoin strategist for Validus Power. But before we close out the show, we have a few more questions for him. And Greg, I want to start it back here. And yes, we've kind of talked about it, hinted about it. In my mind, it looks like that we're in the middle of a monetary paradigm shift, especially when you look at some macro trends. Do you share this same view?
Yes, absolutely. The reality is the Fed has passed a point of no return where they cannot possibly stop printing money. That happened during the COVID crisis and the response to the COVID crisis. So there was a chance the Fed could have skated themselves back on side prior to the response to the COVID crisis. Now it is impossible. The debt spiral, DEBT spiral, will just accelerate because the organic growth of the debt due to the coupon that needs to be paid on the debt is actually outstripping any growth in the economy, thereby meaning that the debt burden is growing faster than the ability of the economy to grow.
So, Greg, how does, or really, what is in store for the world over the next 12 months? You know, you've got all different kinds of.
Well, 12 months is a pretty short time frame, guys. Let's expand the time frame and realize that fiat money always fails, okay? The reality is the United States will be the last fiat currency to fail, but there will be hundreds of other fiat currencies that fail across the world before the United States dollar fails. That includes the Canadian dollar, which I'm not happy about, but there's a big risk that the Canadian dollar fails within my lifetime, which I'm not certain how long I'll live, but I know I won't live more than 30 years from my current age. So let's just understand we need to prepare for this eventuality. All weaker currencies outside of the United States need to prepare. And if the United States doesn't prepare for it, everyone else is going to own Bitcoin and the United States is not going to own any. And by not owning any, the United States will be behind the eight ball. So everybody needs to own Bitcoin as insurance for the global debasement of fiat, not just the U.S. dollar, but all other fiats that are out there.
So, in short, would you say that we're kind of in this like glorified wealth transfer?
It could be. If you're smart enough to own an insurance product that will allow you to participate in the wealth transfer, yes, we are. If you are ignoring the reality of the fiat debasement and you're just assuming that things are going to continue as they always have, you might miss out. And that is the danger to you and your children. You need to take these precautions because, listen, I'm a boomer, okay? I'm a boomer, and I'm part of the most selfish generation that's ever been born. We are pulling forward gains that should accrue to our children because we're too soft, okay? As a soft boomer, I am disgraced by the response of my generation to having to do things like fiscal austerity. We need to, we really need to buckle down, people. And I know the central bank is not going to be able to do that, which means you need to do it yourself. That means owning Bitcoin.
Wow. Well, guys, if that wasn't a show for you, I don't know what else was. I mean, again, Greg always brings the fire every time we've had him on. But I just want to thank you for tuning in. And Greg, thanks for joining us today. It was really great to have you back on again. Can you please let people know how they can follow your work?
Absolutely, guys. I want to say thank you again to you guys. Happy Memorial Day to my friends in the U.S. I have gone to school in the U.S., and I actually had a roommate who died in 9/11. So my heart goes out to all Americans. I love you guys. You can follow me on Twitter at Foss, Greg Foss. So that's FOSS, And I like to respond to criticisms as well as questions. My goal is to help educate the world to this most beautiful technology that can solve so many of the problems we have in the world right now.
Greg Foss from Ballot is Power, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to our host, Matthew J. Moore, co-host Scott McElroy. I'm Russell Mills. We'll see you here next week for Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore.